Okay, it's my pleasure today to welcome Mr. Edoardo Zaffuto, who is a founding member of Addiopizzo and Addiopizzo Travel, where he conducts several kinds of activities to educate the public about the Pizzo, as you know now, the Mafia extortion system, to also dismantle that system, and to expand a network of ethical consumption, person by person, one at a time, business by business, one at a time. And in addition to all of his responsibilities as webmaster for Addiopizzo Travel and working also with the foreign press, he leads extortion-free tours that enable tourists to discover the beauties of Sicily's land and history. Mr. Zaffuto also collaborates, as you now see, with schools and universities in Italy and around the world. He gives educational talks and courses on the history of the Mafia and the Anti-Mafia, Addiopizzo Travel, and he's volunteering, okay? He's volunteering his time today to share his own personal history and Addiopizzo's history, and then discuss them with you, answer some of your questions. So let's give a really warm UW welcome to Edoardo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to meet you, even if I'm not personally there. It's a good pleasure for me to have this meeting, and I thank you for having organized that. Yes, your description was really accurate. I would like to tell you something more about Addiopizzo and Addiopizzo Travel. First of all, Addiopizzo is an NGO, is a volunteer organization established in 2004 in Sicily. It's a grassroots movement that started from a group of young people and friends. Still, Addiopizzo is actually a movement mainly composed by young people. Now I'm one of the oldest, but during the 13 years we have been recruiting other young people younger than us joined the movement, and so they still keep the average age pretty young. It's a non-profit organization, of course. It's a non-partitic, so it's a, let's say that is, of course, our action is politic, as a politic, let's say, a goal, but at the same time we are far from any political party. It's a non-violent movement, as you can imagine. So we try to fight the mafia with our ideas, with the culture, with the education, with the creativity. Addiopizzo Travel is a tour operator that was born a few years later in 2009, and it's actually a tour operator that works, let's say, in the framework of the social businesses. So it's basically an experience of social entrepreneurism that was born out of Addiopizzo as a branch of Addiopizzo to support the anti-mafia movement, and to support in particular the business that refused to say no, refused to give money to the mafia. So this is just to give you, let's say, a quick overview about both Addiopizzo and Addiopizzo Travel. Now I would like to focus a little bit, let's say, the origin of the movement. I would say let's start with, let's say, analyzing some words, some etymologies. That is very interesting to understand a phenomenon. Let's start with the name of the things, and then we understand a little bit better what is the phenomenon we are trying to analyze. So first of all, for example, Pizzo. Pizzo is translated with protection money in English. Anyway, when I give this translation, to me, it doesn't sound really good, because the English expression protection money suggests that there is actually a protection, while we know perfectly that Pizzo is it's a very fake kind of protection. So the mafia offer protection from themselves, actually. That's the problem. So there is another, let's say, translation of Pizzo that is just extortion. But extortion is a very limited, very small crime, while Pizzo is actually a system of extortion run by the mafia, and let's say run with a particular, let's say, system in which the mafia itself, let's say, act as they are a local government, let's say, that impose a legitimate tax. So Pizzo, this is Pizzo. It's something way more complicated than a series of extortion. It's really a system. And the word Pizzo, literally, well, actually, comes from a Sicilian word. You probably know that in Italy we have many languages, and we usually call them dialects. Anyway, the language that is spoken in Sicily, the Sicilian dialect, is actually a language, a proper language with different words compared to the Italian. And Pizzo is a Sicilian word. Pizzo literally means beak, so the beak of the bird. So what's the relationship between the mafia and the birds? There is a Sicilian expression that is bagnare su pizzo. Bagnare su pizzo means dip the beak. Dip the beak. So it's an expression that refers to the way the birds used to drink, usually drinks, like getting a little drop of water from a fountain, from a pond, from a pothole, from a river, just like getting a little drop from many sources of water. So flying from that place to another and sipping a little bit. So does the mafia. So bagnare su pizzo means to get a little bit of money from that store, that shop, that business, and so on. The idea of the Pizzo is that the mafia doesn't want to get too much money from only few businesses. This is not what the mafia want to have. That's not the goal of the mafia. For the mafia, it's more important to have a little amount of money from many businesses. There is a reason why they do it. It's because Pizzo is not just a matter of it's not just a resource of money. It's not just a matter of economic activity. With Pizzo, the mafia, as I said, acts like they are a state, a government. And when everybody in the same area, in the same village, in the same town, accept to pay money to the mafia, they are giving legitimacy to the power of the mafia. So they are accepting the fact that the mafia has the right somehow to ask this money. So really the mafia acts like Pizzo is a tax. I will tell you later, well, there are very many, let's say, similarities to the Pizzo system and to the taxation system. So, for example, the mafia ask money to single business, let's say, according to their size, to their income. So they ask a low quantity of money from a small business, and they ask a lot more to a big store or a big business. So it's a sort of a progressive tax. Again, the mafia doesn't want to force you to go to the police. It doesn't want you to feel that they are giving, there's something unjust, there's something that's not fair. They want to ask a reasonable amount of money, and they want you to accept it like it is normal. Normal is another important word. I mean, when Addiopizzo was born, before Addiopizzo was born, the problem was that not just that many shops and business were paying money to the mafia. the big problem was that it was considered normal, that was the standard, that was accepted and even socially acceptable. That is more serious. So paying money to the mafia was not considered something very serious or anyway. Well, of course, there were many shops that many shop owners that would have refused to pay, but they were scared, of course. But anyway, many other shop owners they didn't even think about the consequence of paying money to the mafia. It was considered normal, and it was also considered anyway. Let's say there was no way out somehow. There was no way out because before 2004, when very rarely single businessmen tried to rebel, they've been pushed down, and some of them have been killed. So a few years later, of course, whenever you were thinking about the possibility of refusing to pay, you were thinking about men like Libero Gassi, who was an entrepreneur killed by the mafia in 1991 because he refused to pay protection money, because he went to the police to report the mafia extortions. So that was the situation in Palermo, my town, when Addiopizzo was born. So imagine that we actually, our generation, my generation in particular, could see the peak of the violence of the mafia, of the Sicilian mafia during the 80s, and in particular at the beginning of the 90s. So we have, I can remember when I was a kid the murders of Dalla Chiesa or Costa or many policemen, many journalists, many prosecutors, of course. And when I was a teenager, I was shocked as well as many other people of my age by the murder of Falcone and Borsellino, the two prosecutors that were considered actually the heroes of the anti-mafia. Libero Gassi was killed 1 year earlier, and of course it left, let's say, of course, a strong footprint. Let's say that all the people in 2004 that were thinking about Pizzo were thinking of Libero Gassi and how he was abandoned by everybody, how he was alone, trying to fight against the mafia, and trying, well, actually even hoping to create an association or anyway a movement or a group of people who would refuse altogether to pay Pizzo to the mafia. It didn't happen. It didn't happen in 1991. He was alone, and of course for the mafia it was very easy to kill him. Well, in 2004, so of course the situation was a little bit better. So the mafia was not as violent as in the 80s and early 90s at the time. The mafia was making a lot of business, was running their business, keeping a low profile, trying not to attract attention anymore. But of course, it was still very strong, especially on the economic level. And the extortion was one of the, let's say, most important business. As I said, not just for the money that they can, the money they get from that, but because of they could control the territory. They could, let's say, have a social control of a city like Palermo, like zoning it and, let's say, going around asking money, neighborhood per neighborhood, in order to control everything. So, I would like to tell you about how it was born, how Addiopizzo was born. Imagine that in 2004 there was a group of young people, 25, 28, 30 at the most, that started to think about a business in Palermo, a possible business. They dream of opening a pub in town, and one night they were discussing about this plan. Actually, one of them was in charge to write a sort of easy business plan, sort of a draft of a business plan. He wrote all the list of expenses you have to face when you start a business, like, of course, renting a place, or like, paying the suppliers, or paying the bills and everything. And this guy put the word Pizzo on the list of the expenses, Of course, that was a provocation, and it worked very well, because that night, while having a beer in another pub, actually those people start to face seriously the problem for the first time. So thinking about themselves in the position of dealing with a mafioso who is going in your shop to ask money. Of course, everybody says, no, we don't want to pay money to the mafia. We don't want to pay Pizzo. It's crazy. We would like to start an ethical business, fair trade beers, and we have to think about paying money to the mafia. That's absurd. But at the same time, the guy who wrote the plan says, I don't want to pay as well, but this is Palermo. This is how it has been working for a long time, and this is how it works now. So even if it's crazy, you have to think about the moment in which the mafia will knock at your door asking to start to pay. So the same night, another guy of this group of friends couldn't even sleep because of that idea, their talk, and little by little, let's say that a phrase, some words start to come up to his mind, and he started to think that seriously, an entire people that pays protection money is a people without dignity. That he wrote immediately, un intero popolo che paga il pizzo è un popolo senza dignità. It's actually a very sad statement, So because that's a sort of let's say statement that Sicilians altogether, not just the shopkeepers, not just the shop owners, but the entire community, have been accepting the Pizzo for many, many years. We are all paying money to the mafia. Since the most part of the shops in Palermo pays, of course, we are giving our money whenever we shop, we buy something, trousers in our clothes shops that pays money to the mafia, pays Pizzo. We are giving a little bit of that money indirectly to the mafia. And so this guy called Vittorio posed to his friends, why don't we why don't you actually print some stickers with this slogan, all people that pays protection money as a people without dignity, and we can paste them around town by night, of course. And so they did it. That was the beginning of the movement, like pasting stickers with this simple but very effective anti-mafia slogan by night, anonymously, of course, and basically watching about the consequences. And the consequences were amazing and were very unexpected, because the local TV, the newspapers, all the people, the police, were all speaking about these stickers. They were, they were very surprised of that, of those stickers. And many people start to say, what? I don't know who did it, but I agree. So many people, little by little, start to team up and try to get in contact with this first group of anonymous young people, and the group start to grow pretty soon. We started to do like this kind of communication actions very frequently, always by night. For 1 year, we did it always anonymously, like a secret organization. We did it with stickers, with banners. We started to put some very a simple website on the internet. Our idea was that we needed to, let's say, help the people to open wide their eyes, to help them to get awareness of the problem, first of all, because for a long time we have been like sort of blind. We didn't want even to consider to be part of the problem as consumers, you know? And we started to meet every week to discuss about you know, the strategy, the new actions, and we started to think also about something else. So we said, okay, the communication campaign is really working very well. People finally at least talk about the problem of Pizzo. They don't turn their head somewhere else. But now we have to do something more. We have to do another step. And so we start to think that if we could create, put together, let's say, a group of brave shop owners and business people, and that actually have the courage to say, I do not pay protection money, we could encourage the consumers to support them, also to go there in their shops and buy something to support them. We realized since the beginning that the problem of Libero Gassi, the entrepreneur killed in 1991, was that he was alone and he didn't have any solidarity for what he did. So we said, okay, first of all, since we don't want another Libero Gassi anymore, we don't want another hero, another martyr anymore, we will never publish the name of any shop owner or business who refused to pay if we don't reach a larger number. We say that we should arrive to 100 shops before starting this kind of campaign. But at the same time, we say that we don't want to start from the businessman. We want to start with the consumers. So the shops, stores comes later. We first want to have a community of people, of potential consumers who are commit themselves to support the shops and business who refuse to pay. So we first start to go, well, first of all, we started not to be anonymous anymore. Of course, if we want to do something like that, we had to show our face and our names. So we started anyway then to ask citizens of Palermo, like townspeople, to sign a commitment in which you were saying something like, I commit myself to support shops who refuse to pay whenever there will be such a list, you know? So it was a sort of, let's say, a commitment of doing it as soon as we could have a Mafia-free shop list. And it worked very well because we could collect something like 3,500 names and last names of people who said, I am ready to support those Mafia-free shops. And we were stronger because we had this large number in our hand. We could go shop by shop to say, you know, if you do it, this time you will not be alone, as Libero Gassi was. We know that you have 3,500 of people ready to support you, you know? And was very, very effective as well. As you can imagine, the only way of winning over the mafia is the number, is the community. We felt since the beginning that there was strength in numbers, there was safety in numbers. And in 2006, let's say 2 years after the first stickers, we could finally officially start this critical consumption campaign or ethical consumerism campaign with 100 mafia-free shops. And basically with the idea that they could quickly grow as they did it actually later. It was of course something very new for Palermo. The idea was not new at all, because that's exactly the strategy of the fair trade, of the boycotting campaign. We basically used the fair trade idea and we adapted it to the Sicilian context, let's say, the Sicilian situation in which the problem was the mafia, and we needed to support the shops who, rebelled to the mafia. And it was was a success since the beginning, even if 100 shops was a very small numbers. Imagine that it was very hard anyway to convince people to join this group, because there was a lot of resistance, cultural resistance, and above all, of course, fear. Little by little, these numbers start to grow, and eventually, the mafia tried to stop the movement with the usual, let's say, techniques, the usual strategies, that is intimidation and violence. And in particular, in 2007, so 1 year after Addiopizzo, 1 year after the campaign, they burned completely, they destroyed completely with the fire one of the business that joined Addiopizzo. It was called the Guayana, and actually it was like they were producing paints and hardware. It was completely destroyed. So the local mafia boss wanted to punish him because he always refused to pay money to the mafia, to pay Pizzo. At the same time, he was probably giving a message to Addiopizzo saying that it's not true. I mean, you cannot, you are not untouchable, as you say. I don't care if they are 100. We can destroy whoever we want, as we did it in the past. Anyway, this time the mafia failed completely, because Guayana, this entrepreneur, was immediately surrounded by solidarity. Was surprisingly, by the solidarity of townspeople who say that we want you to go on. We are with you. Don't give up. In the past, whenever something like that happened, everybody was escaping as far as possible. Even the employees usually run away. While with Guayana, even the employees were like teaming up with the owner of the business. Addiopizzo started to do let's say to lobby, basically, to make a lot of pressure to the local government, and in few months, thanks to the law for the reimbursement of the victims of the mafia, Mr. Guayana could have a new warehouse for free without losing his business, his vendors, his contracts. You know, we have this good law about the reimbursement of the victims of the mafia, but in the past it didn't work because it took a long time to get this money from the government, and of course after 2 or 3 years waiting for this money, you know, the business failed, you know, and it was it happened like that many times. This time he could have the new warehouse immediately. We have been also very lucky because in the meantime the police arrested the man who tortured the business and the mafia boss who gave the order to do it. So it was a completely failure, I mean, for the mafia, and it was a big success for Addiopizzo. We actually knew that if Guyana would have shut down, even Addiopizzo would have failed, because we were saying we will be all together and we will, the mafia cannot touch us because we are all together. And if Guyana would have failed, I'm pretty sure that Addiopizzo would have failed as well. And from that moment on, you know, we had a series of new entries in the Addiopizzo list, and not just by people who always refuse to pay money to the mafia, pay the Pizzo, but also from people who have been paying Pizzo for years, and then out of the blue they decided to go to the police and to get rid of the Pizzo with the help of our organization. Imagine that there is the only way to stop paying Pizzo is to report it to the police. There is it would be crazy to out of the blue to say to the mafia, I'm not going to pay you anymore. It's too risky. They will immediately react with our retaliation. So the only way is to go to the police and to report and of course to testify in the trial. And so in our organization, some people started to, let's say, specialize in assisting the victims of the mafia. In particular, there are some lawyers, actually some people who were studying law when we started, and they graduate and they are lawyers now. They are specialized in helping the victims of the mafia, doing giving their assistance pro bono. And together with the organization, with the association, we can sort of guarantee this kind of help also to the shop owners who want to stop paying protection money. So right now what happens is that these shop owners, either they go to the police and then the police put them in contact with us, or if they come to us first, we take them together to the police. And of course it will start a very long and stressful and hard, let's say, series of events that will end with a testimony in a trial in which they finally have the opportunity to to send the mafiosi to the jail and actually to get free forever. I want to tell you something about how the campaign works. We ask the shop owners to put a sticker on the window of their shop, a sticker with the logo of the campaign and the name of the campaign. By the way, the campaign is called Pago chi non paga, that in Italian literally means I pay those who does not pay. That of course means I support those who refuse to pay Pizzo. And so this sticker, it's like a sort of round circle with an X. It's of course marks label the mafia-free shops, and so it attracts the consumers. So basically, the shopkeeper says, if you want to buy and if you want to be sure that you're not giving money to the mafia, come here. Anyway, we realized very soon that this label is also a message towards the mafia. So we realized that stickers keep the mafia away from your shop. And the mafia says it. I would say we know it because many pentiti, so many mafia people, after being arrested, they decided to confess something to the police and to the prosecutors. So they turned to give information to the police. You know what the pentito is. No, it's a mafioso that in order to have some benefits, they give information about the organization, about the Cosa Nostra. So 3 or 4 of them recently, they all said that right now the mafia doesn't want to get inside the shop with the Addiopizzo logo. And each one of them said why in a different way. Some of them said we were not stupid, or one of them said we were sure that we would be reported to the police. So somehow the sticker worked like, I usually say, like those signs, like beware to the dog, you know? Beware to the dog. Stay away from here, because if you ask Pizzo here, I will go to the police immediately. And, you know, the mafia is so strong and so arrogant when they realize that the person in front of them is frightened, has fear. The mafia works with your fear. But when they realize that the person they have in front of them is feel to be stronger and confident, I mean, in that case, they are the cowards. The mafia go away. They don't want to mess with people who are part of Addiopizzo. And so imagine that we tried. We started with 100 shops. Now, in 2017, we passed the number of 1,000. You know, still 1,000. It's a big number compared to 100. But at the same time, in 10 years, we realized that we still have a very, very slow, let's say, growth rate. Let's say. We were hoping eventually that this number could explode, but still there is, even now, there is a strong resistance in joining Addiopizzo. Anyway, what we really realize is that we are promoting a generational cultural revolution. So not just not something that you can like a typical revolution that's change everything from one day to another. We are realizing that in 10 years we have been somehow impacting the mindset of many people, and in particular young people. Addiopizzo started to work with schools since the beginning, since 2004. Like going into the school and talking openly about the mafia with the students, with the children, with the high school students, and trying to contribute to change their attitude towards the mafia and towards the idea of Pizzo. And 13 years later, we see the effect. Now there are more and more business run by young people who call us even before starting their business. They're saying, I don't want to do like my parents have been doing. I want to be Addiopizzo since the beginning, since before opening. The idea that Pizzo is normal, the idea that Pizzo is socially acceptable is gone, at least in a larger part of the Sicilian population. And so I think that the revolution will be complete when, let's say that the economic class, let's say, of the economic, yes, the economy of Sicily will be completely replaced by this new wave of young people. And even the children, you know, that I have an 8-year-old son, Mattia, and he is still together with his friends and cousins, schoolmates. He is already thinking about somehow his next step. I mean, what he has to do in order to contribute to defeat the mafia, you know, somehow. So this is very important to understand that the mafia, as it's not only a criminal problem, but it's also a cultural problem. You know perfectly how the mafia is a very complex phenomenon that includes an economic level and a political level, a criminal level, of course, and a cultural level. The only way of defeating the mafia is to work together in all these directions. The police will never defeat the mafia, will never have the final success against the mafia without a cultural revolution against the mafia itself. I would like to tell you about Addiopizzo travel. You know, we since the beginning we tried to find all the possible way of helping the Mafia-free shop list, support the Mafia-free shop list. So we started to do, for example, every year a fair, a Mafia-free fair. That is actually a big festival in which the consumers can meet in the same square all the shop owners and the business that offers their products somehow, you know. So it's like it's a festival with music, but also it's an Addiopizzo fair. We started to think that it was necessary not just to label the shops, but also the single products. Let's say, imagine an olive oil maker who is member of Addiopizzo would like to put his little logo in the bottle of oil, and that's great because that olive oil could reach even North Italy or can go also abroad. So somehow we can involve foreign people in our campaign. Let's say we can make them a part of the change. And Addiopizzo Travel was one of these ideas. So we start to think that there are many hotels, restaurants, you know, bus companies, souvenir shops in our list, and we could create tour packages just using them as vendors of our packages. Actually, we had a sort of this idea because of let's say, we have to give an offer to a demand from outside. So we start to receive some messages from abroad in particular of people saying, whenever I will travel to Sicily, I will spend my vacation in Sicily, I would like to know which hotels are, let's say, mafia-free, which restaurants are mafia-free. I would like to go there. So somehow there was a demand of being part of this change, even from people who lives very far from Sicily. And so we started to create these packages, and pretty soon we realized that, let's say that another very important mission for Addiopizzo Travel was to contribute to change the image of Sicily around the world. You know, you're Americans. I'm sure that you've seen The Godfather many times. As I did, I love The Godfather movies because actually, as fiction, of course, as movies, I think they are masterpieces. You know, for sure. They are like a sort of Greek tragedies or Shakespearean tragedies. The problem is that for many people, that is the only source of information about the mafia and about Sicily. So for many people, of course, the mafia portrayed by Coppola is what the real mafia is. And for many people, the idea is that Sicilians are mafiosi in their DNA. They are, let's say, they are sort of, the mafia is inside the Sicilian nature. And that is very wrong because, you know, The Godfather never mentioned, of course, the anti-mafia movement, never mentioned the people that have been fighting the mafia for 150 years. The anti-mafia movement is as old as the mafia itself. And the movies, the Godfather movies, or the Godfather style movies, anyway, they of course focus the evil hero that could be, you know, Don Corleone and so on. They actually analyze his feelings, his attitude. They make it very human, you know. On the other hand, if that is your point of view, you forget the point of view of the victims of the mafia, for example. So you start to forget what the mafia has done to Sicily, what the mafia has been, how the mafia affected the life of single Sicilian and of the entire Sicilian community. So we realized that it was our goal to speak correctly about the mafia, to of course to satisfy the legitimate curiosity of the tourists who want to come to Sicily. They would like to know a little bit about the mafia phenomenon. We want to give clear and correct information, but at the same time we want to show the Sicilians who are fighting against the mafia, the Sicily who is little by little is working for change. Otherwise, the portrait you have of Sicily is something like that goes back to 30 or 40 years. This is the real Sicily. That's what we say. And this is the real beauty of Sicily, not just the sea, the landscape, the archaeology, the art normal architecture, or the mosaics, or the Greek temples. This is also part of the beauty of Sicily. But also the engagement of people, community, association that works day by day against the mafia. This is part of the beauty of Sicily as well. I would like to stop just because you know, I know that I've been speaking for a long time and I could go on, but I don't know if there's any question that could be something more interesting. If I can
okay. No, you're the beauty of Sicily, Edoardo. No, this is wonderful. Let's open the discussion up to questions that you may have. And does anybody have a question right now? Or should I go to one of your questions? There, brava!
My question is, how much are the shops actually paid? Like, is it a certain percentage of what they earn? Or is it like a fixed price for every store?
Yes. Okay, imagine that it's difficult to make an estimation. Anyway, we have data, specific data, because sometimes, of course, the police, you know, arrest some people who confess, and also, you know, sometimes they find the accountant books with the specific amount of money that every single shop pay. It has been changing a lot since 13 years ago. Let's say before the financial crisis, the prices were a little bit higher in general, and so now they've been a little bit decreasing. Also because now it's harder to convince them to pay, because there is a general attitude that of refusing the idea of paying a Pizzo. In general, it's actually it's on proportion. It's in proportion to the income of the shop, but it's not a specific percentage, because the mafia don't ask, of course, let's say, information about how much they earn. they have a general idea. They watch a shop and they say, okay, we can get, let's say, 200 euros per month or 300 euros per month from that shop. And so the Pizzo varies a lot. Imagine that middle-sized shops in Palermo could pay, yes, 300 or 400 right now, I would say, if it's a good one. But a smaller shop pays 200 euros per month, for example, and sometimes in the very let's say the working class neighborhood in which there are many open air shops, and especially in the street markets, that are very popular in Palermo. Well, in that areas, for example, they pay almost nothing, like 10, 15 euros per month, just because the mafia wants them to pay, not because they need their money. It's again because they want them to accept the idea that the mafia has the right to ask this money. And yes, and usually, they come in your shop not really every month, but in Christmas time and in Easter time, when they know that there is more cash, and so it's less hard for the businessman, for the shop owner to pay.
Yeah. No, and I really like how you emphasize the fact about it's not necessarily the amount of money in itself, it's that control then that they can exert, and social control, not only economic. That's so important. Another question.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, you can ask a follow-up, of course.
So I read something about Addiopizzo supermarket.
Addiopizzo?
Supermarket, un supermercato.
Un supermarket. No, not really. Actually, there was a sort of Addiopizzo mini mart. It actually was a shop that tried to sell only products of the Addiopizzo network. It's still in Palermo. It's still called Punto Mafia-free. That's the name of the shop. But right now is mainly they realized that they just focused on selling products from one single business. So the idea of a supermarket with the Addiopizzo product could be something in the future, but right now it's not there.
I have a question that was on the Twitter feed, and one of them, this was Maddie's question: how has your family dealt with your involvement in Addiopizzo? I'm thinking also of when you formed, when you went out even anonymously during the night putting up stickers. Your parents, I don't know, sisters, brothers, how have they adapted?
Yes. Okay, so consider first of all that my mother and my father have been involved in the anti-mafia movements before Addiopizzo, when I was a kid and when I was a teenager. My father was a school teacher, so he retired. So he was one of the teachers who were working with students and with the students with educational anti-mafia project in the schools. And my mother, as well as my father, were involved in the protests and the marches and the protests after in 1992 when the mafia killed Falcone and Borsellino. That was a moment in which the entire town reacted for the emotional shock of those bombs, and so they were participating to all the activities to protest against the mafia and against the corrupted politics. And so somehow I grew up with this kind of education, with this kind of values. Anyway, when I started in 2004 with the stickers, of course, as you can imagine, my mother started to say, I like what you do, what you are doing, what you're doing with your friends. I support you, but at the same time, don't go too far, be very prudent, and especially when we decided that it was time to not to hide anymore, to stop the anonymity. Then my mother said, "Why you are doing it?" It was for a mother, of course, it's harder to accept.
Right.
Anyway, I can tell you now that we feel safe because of the number. We feel safe because, and so my mother is more, even if she's anxious, she's actually more relaxed. She realized that the more and more we gain support, and the more and more the mafia seems to stay away from us.
Right. Oh, good. Christopher, do you want to ask one of the questions? Or I'll jump.
Well, one of them, there are many questions related to your safety, to the safety of businesses. I think one question that I had personally, and was reflected in some of the tweets, was, is there an economic advantage or disadvantage right now to being a member of Addiopizzo? Or is it, for example, many people, will shop fair trade, or will, shop or buy organic, but it may cost more. Is that something that maybe the neutral consumer, has to keep in mind, that they're going to purchase with their, based on their values, ethical consumption, or is it fairly even?
Okay, so since the beginning, we wanted a consumer campaign to be effective also on the economic level, of course. Yeah. We say that we don't want just people who are just motivated have an ethical motivation. We want them to have some benefits because of being part of this network. Because the idea is, if a network of business is successful because they are a member of an anti-mafia network, that would give success to the movement itself. And we were thinking at the beginning that maybe the prices of the shops who don't pay protection money could be a little bit lower because they don't pay money for the mafia. Right. Anyway, we also realized that since in Italy we have also a problem of tax evasion, so the shop owners, the shopkeeper who doesn't want to be member of Addiopizzo, they actually, some of them, they don't want to do it also because they evade their taxes, and so of course their prices are lower than the one who are member of Addiopizzo. So in general, we realize that it actually don't affect the prices, the cost. What we can say is that specifically for some sectors, let's say for example the tourism, we could make the difference. So we can even quantify exactly year by year how much money we orient to the Addiopizzo vendors, like hotels, restaurants, and so on. And since we only choose those kind of vendors among the Addiopizzo network, from the Addiopizzo network, let's say the entire, turnover of Addiopizzo goes to support this clean economy, this economy of this network somehow. Even the fact that some business were born after, because of Addiopizzo, that's actually very important. So Addiopizzo Travel we can also say how many people are involved that works with us, and actually this is a good sign, good message, because we suggest the idea that the anti-mafia can help also for this economic development of our territory. It can help to win the unemployment. You know, we have a very high unemployment rate in Sicily, and many people, young people in particular, decide to go away from Sicily to find a job somewhere else. And with experience like Addiopizzo Travel, we keep them here, and we give them a sort of new chance of working in Sicily, let's say, following a new economic model that's in opposition with the economy controlled, twisted, or in the hand of the mafia.
Yeah. I'm wondering, with us here, aside from coming and taking trips with you, which I'd love to do a Addiopizzo travel tour, but what can we do here in support of all of you there? So each of us sitting in the audience and everything, how can we support you?
Yes, well, first of all, you can talk about Addiopizzo. You can talk about what Sicily is right now. You can make people aware, even in the United States, of what's going on in Sicily right now, and like helping also like defeating many cliches and that are still stereotypes that are still there. You can, of course, I would invite you to travel to Sicily, because you can give an effective support to the change, like helping the anti-mafia economy to grow. We actually, since Addiopizzo is still a self-financed organization, we receive donation, sometimes a very small donation, not really big, but they are constant. They are from all over the world, and they help us to keep going with our volunteering job. So I think that as we asked first of all to the people of Palermo to be aware of the problem. That is actually what I can ask also to you, and be aware of the new situation that's going on in Sicily right now.
Okay. Thank you. Let's give thank you so much.